We just got in a huge load of conifers, and this video is going to be about what conifers are going to grow here in the South, Zone 7B. I'm in Shelby, North Carolina, and I've spent the last 5 or 6 years researching this and experimenting, so I have a pretty good base knowledge about what kind of conifers are going to grow here in the South. So if you're not interested in conifers or evergreens, you might want to skip this video. All right, I just want to jump right in and start talking about this blue point juniper. As you see, it's got a bluish green foliage, and it is an evergreen. You may have seen this one before. It's a little more common, but I'll tell you what I love about blue point juniper. It grows about 8–10 foot tall and about 6 to 8 foot wide, a little taller than wider, and it does grow in a nice conical shaped form, which makes it really great for corner plantings, a specimen, but I have seen people use it as privacy screens as well, and it sure does make for a beautiful screen. All right, up next is one of my favorite conifers. This is Chamaecyparis nucentensis pendula, and all that is a weeping Alaskan cedar. Now, I've not had these in a few years, so I was excited to see them come back in. This is an amazing specimen, especially if you like weeping conifers. This one is very graceful. It really does hold up well against our heat and humidity. It's going to grow up maybe 20 feet tall, maybe about 6 or 8 foot wide. It can't even get 10–12 foot wide over time, but it's going to have like this majestic weeping form, weeping branches, and it truly does look amazing as this matures. So follow me over here. This is another weeping Alaskan cedar called Green Arrow. I don't think I've ever actually had Green Arrow in. What makes it very special and unique, let's pull this one out where you can see it. Again, same type deal. It's an evergreen that has bluish green foliage. But what I really love and am fascinated about Green Arrow is it stays very, very narrow. It only gets maybe like 2 to 3 foot wide, but still like 20 feet tall. So, you know, out in a landscape, it just looks very unusual. And if you have a small area that you don't want something to get too large in, definitely consider this tree. All right, I did get another pine in. Very unusual. I've not had it before. This is an Oregon green Austrian pine, and the way it grows is kind of like a thunderhead pine if you've ever seen one. Maybe it gets about 8 to 10 foot tall, 6 to 8 foot wide. It has a very irregular shape, a lot less formal than some of the other shrubs I've showed you, like the blue point juniper. But when this thing candles in the springtime, puts out its new growth, it looks absolutely amazing. I don't know if I've showed you my thunderhead before, but in the springtime, it truly is a specimen. This is going to grow very similar to that. All right, let's walk around here and talk about Fad Albert blue spruce. I got some in a 6-gallon size and a 10-gallon size. I'm very familiar with Fad Albert. This is a blue spruce that grows very, very well in our zone. The way it was, whatever they've hybridized it or grafted it with, it just tends to stand up a lot better in the heat and humidity. Al, if you want to come in and look at these sharp blue needles, absolutely stunning. There is not a lot of conifers out there that'll give you this intense blue look. I know mine that I planted down at our sign is about 10 to 12 foot tall now, and it's just doing great. It's probably been there about 6 or 7 years now. Again, these, when they're smaller, they don't have a lot of shape to them, but as they mature, they will get a lot more pyramidal, like a typical Christmas tree look. They will get up to 20 feet tall and about 10 feet wide. Up next, let me show you a topiary that we got in. This is called a Hindu pan style topiary, and this is out of a Chamaecyparis blue boulevard. Now they make them out of those plants because they respond very well to pruning. You can keep the topiary this size, or you could let it grow up. You just got to keep this form. And basically they've just got these little pom-poms on each end. And I think this is a great little specimen, or if you have a small garden and you want to keep something just interesting, this is a really great shrub. It's evergreen. It's going to keep bluish needles year round. And it's definitely going to be something unique that not a lot of people have. All right, I got 2 pines I've got to show you. One I've never had before, And one I do have planted at my house, and I love them both. These are very, very cool pines. Let's talk about this pine right here first. This is a mugo pine called Pomelo. I have never had it before. I tend to stay away from mugo pines. I've had them in the past, and they tend to brown out really fast. So I don't typically carry mugo pines, but this one's a little different. I talked to my broker, and this one's supposed to be a little more well suited for our zone, a lot less browning. I think it's beautiful with these dark green glossy needles. Now moving right along, this is my favorite pine of all time. See, I mean, seriously. This is Cyadipides verticulata. This is a Japanese umbrella pine. I've got one in front of my house planted, and it's doing beautiful. I wish you could feel these needles. They feel very rubbery. They're very soft and pliable. But this has a more formal look to it. It's going to get about maybe 4 foot wide and 8 to 10 feet tall. And I just think it has a really great columnar look, great for corner plantings, great for a specimen, and again, holds up really well in our heat and humidity. All right, I'm not allowed to say this is my favorite pine because I just told you my umbrella pine was my favorite. This is Pinus strobus, and Pinus strobus is a white pine, and I really love this one. I have, again, I have one of these in my yard. I planted it last year, and it's just doing fantastic, even though this has been a brutal summer. This is more of a rounded shape. It doesn't grow very tall. You can think of this as like a 4 foot by 4 foot. It's going to keep these blue, beautiful blue needles. They're very soft. Japanese white pines tend to have softer needles. So this is a really great shrub to have near the house. Also, just again, I've been experimenting with conifers for the last 5 or 6 years. A lot of these conifers I have grown from experience. Trust me, when we bring in loads like this, they're very expensive, and we don't want customers to lose anything. So a lot of this has been trial and error on my part, testing them, experimenting them on our area. But I will say, what you have to do for all of these conifers is to make sure they do not have wet feet. They love well-drained soil. So around here, what we like to do to break up our clay is mix in a little bit of soil conditioner into the hole. That soil conditioner is acidic. It'll break down the clay over time and will help you tremendously with drainage. Follow me back over here because I have a Hinoki Cypress I've never had before. And if you don't know anything about Hinokis, they are an evergreen, and they do hold up really well around here. You're going to be okay growing Hinokis in the south for the most part. This one is a kind of an irregular shape, but this is called a Slender Hinoki. And what I love about it, and I'm not 100% familiar. Okay, 20 foot tall, only 4 feet wide. That is crazy for a Hinoki cypress, because if you're familiar with just the regular Chamaecyparis, obtusa, gracilis, they can get humongous. This one's only going to get like 4 foot wide. That's pretty cool. I mean, for a Hinoki cypress, they do feature really dark emerald green foliage, and they do not ever brown. I mean, occasionally you're going to have some interior needles that you might have to get out. But other than that, this would make a fantastic specimen. All right, so this conifer, again, a little more irregular, a little more less formal. So let me show you a formal shrub. If you like something a little more manicured. This is Picea abies cupressina. And Picea abies, Picea is a spruce, abies is Norway. So this is a Norway spruce, and it's a columnar Norway spruce. So you know Norway spruces, they are very large sized trees. This one has been bred or grafted to be very narrow. So again, with this one, it's only going to be maybe 4 or 5 feet, but it's still going to get the height of a regular Norway spruce. Now, Norways get dark green needles, and they have beautiful cones. This one, you're probably not going to see cones until it gets a little more age on them. But what I got to say about Picea abies, I wouldn't necessarily grow just any Picea abies in this area. There's particular ones that I've become accustomed to that I know that can handle our heat and humidity. So if you're watching this and you're in zone 8 or you're in zone 9, then definitely send us a message, because I don't recommend all of these conifers for zones warmer than where we're at, which is a zone 7B. All right, next up we have Cupressus glabra. This is a blue ice cypress, and this truly, come on in. Look at the foliage on this. I mean, this is very, very unique. Cypresses, you're gonna be okay in our zone for the most part. Almost any of them pretty much will grow here. There might be a few exceptions to that. This is gonna keep these blue needles year round. It's gonna grow up about 20 foot tall. And this one is gonna get around 8 to 10 foot wide. It's gonna vary. In the northern states, they're gonna get a lot bigger. Down here, maybe consider it 20 to 25 feet tall, about 8 to 10 foot wide. All right, let me show you a shrub or a tree that is not formal. This is another weeping shrub. I tend to favor weeping shrubs. I think they make awesome specimens. This one's Picea pungens pendula. Picea, again, spruce. Pungens is a blue spruce. Pendula is weeping. And the cultivar of this one, the particular variety, is called the Blues. And they make really, really great specimens. This top leader can be trained however you want it to grow. So if you want this to continue to grow to 6 foot tall, 8 foot tall, 10 foot tall, you can, but you just keep them staked. See how they got a bamboo stake? Now, if you like this shrub at the height that it is, then you can just let this leader kind of do its thing, and you can even train them to bend back over and continue to weep down. That way it gets no taller, but it continues to spread out over the ground. So they kind of grow however you train them to grow. And again, blue needles, evergreen, weeping, great specimen here. All right, another Picea pungens. This one is fastigiata. So fastigiata is upright. This is a blue spruce, except for it stays extremely columnar. It only gets maybe 3 to 4 foot wide, more like 3 foot wide, but it will grow up to 10, 12 foot tall. So again, for a corner planting, this is really great. Or a specimen if you have a small garden. Again, Picea pungens, blue spruce, blue needles year round, really great conifer, and you don't see this one every day. This is Cedrus atlantica aurea. And all that is a golden atlas cedar. Atlas cedars tend to get pretty large. This kind of is a standard form atlas cedar, but it is golden. So I want you to see the foliage on this, because I don't think we've ever actually had these in the nursery. Look at that gold and green foliage. It almost looks white from a distance, but up close, it's like a variegated yellow and green. Now, all atlas cedars, when they're container grown, for the most part, look very skinny. They are going to grow narrow in the beginning until they get some height on them, some maturity, and then they will begin to spread out and look like a full-size tree. This is going to get large, 25 to 30 foot tall, even 20, 25 foot wide, but they're slow growing, so it's not going to get there any soon. But this one does need some space, and it'll make a great specimen for you. This one's got some weight to it. This is Picea glauca pendula. Now Picea, again spruce, glauca is white, and pendula is weeping. So what we have here is a weeping white spruce. I'm very familiar with these. Bruce, if you remember our conifer video, he's got one growing in his yard. It's doing quite well. These really do need a lot of drainage, and if you can keep them out of the afternoon sun, they'll do even better in our climate, because our afternoon sun is very, very harsh, but it is going to need at least 6 to 8 hours of sun. Now, with that being said, this has got bluish, grayish green needles. And even though this is a weeping shrub, it still kind of has a formal look to it. It will get up about 15 to 20 foot tall, but it's going to stay very narrow, maybe 3 to 4 foot wide. And again, maybe if you needed some symmetry and one on each side of steps or one on each side of the house, you could certainly do that. I absolutely love this one. We got another Norway spruce here, and I bet you're probably saying, Norway spruce? Yeah, this one's called Little Jim. It's a very dwarf compact spruce, and they've grafted it to be on a standard. Now, if you hear, talking about topiaries and standards, this has just been grafted to be in a little tree, because this on its own would just be a tiny little petite shrub, or tree rather. So this one, Picea abies, is an evergreen. It's going to stay very, very dense and compact. You can see how it's growing. I mean, it's just extremely dense in there. And this one's just going to grow into a little ball. So this is a cute little topiary you can put in a pot near the door. You can put it in the ground, and maybe once a year, once every other year, you might want to prune this one up to keep its form. But for the most part, it's going to grow extremely slow and just kind of keep to itself. All right, let's talk about two globe-shaped spruces that's going to do well for you. This one's Picea pungens globosa. It's going to have a nice round shape. It's going to grow 3x3 or 4x4. Again, this is kind of like the Fat Albert spruce, but instead grows more like a shrub and very rounded. Now this is going to be year-round blue color, part to full sun, well-drained soil. Now this one on my left, this is an Omarica spruce, Picea Omarica nana. Omarica is a Serbian spruce. Now I have a Picea Omarica in my yard. I find that it's doing extremely well. I think they might be the toughest spruce for this area out of all the ones I've mentioned so far. Now this one in particular is nana. That is dwarf, and this one does stay extremely dwarf. In fact, if you clip out this top little leader right here, it will just grow basically into a ball. You might have to do it a couple times, but this one just grows a few inches a year. Treat this one more like a shrub than a tree. And again, it's going to feature these blue, grayish green needles. And I think it's a great petite shrub if you need to do a foundational planting. All right, here's another Chamaecyparis blue barberry. Got me right there. This is another Chamaecyparis blue boulevard. Now Chamaecyparis is a false cypress, and I'm gonna just tell you on this, because this shrub again responds so well to pruning, you can almost shape this into anything you want. I know a guy who's got one that's about 6 foot tall, 3 foot wide, and he's trained it and pruned it into like a cone shape, and a blue cone sitting at your door. That's absolutely amazing. You can also just kind of let them grow wild, and if you do that, they are probably going to get 10 or 12 foot and look a little more less formal, more informal. But again, I love these because they grow so great in our area. This is Juniperus procumbens. It's just a procumbens juniper. A lot of people call these Asian contemporary junipers because they got that bonsai look to them. This one has been grafted on a standard, so it's almost like a tree. If you don't prune these, which you can prune them, they respond really great to pruning, but if you don't prune them, the foliage will just tend to grow down onto the ground, and you'll have a nice little dwarf tree. Now this is not going to get any taller, and when you plant this, you're probably going to lose another foot on it, so just keep that in mind. This is a very small petite tree that you can grow in the ground or in containers. All right, right here we have Thuja occidentalis. This is basically the same thing as an Arborvitae, an emerald green Arborvitae, and this is a very great privacy screen shrub. If you need some tree, I should say, not shrub, I keep saying shrub, but 3 to 4 foot wide, and again 10 to 12 foot tall. So it's a great screen, but it's not going to get too huge, so it can stay in small areas. A lot of people also use these as specimens because they do have a nice conical shape to them, and beautiful evergreen year round. Over here we have Pinus flexus, Vanderwolf's pyramid. This one's leaning a little bit in the pot because it's balled and burlap. They just put it in a 15-gallon container. This has a very nice pyramidal shape. It's going to get about 15 to 20 foot tall. Around here, more like 15 foot tall. It's going to get about 8 foot wide. It's got these beautiful, soft, bluish green needles. And again, like, you can't judge a lot of these trees when they're in containers because for whatever reason, they tend to grow more vertical before they grow horizontal when they're in these cans. And out in a landscape, when this thing spreads out, it will absolutely be an amazing specimen. I just want to talk about these boxwoods real quick. These are Green Mountains. They are really great for topiaries because they respond so well to pruning. They pretty much around here don't care when you prune them, but I suggest later in the year or early spring, not in the dead heat of summer. But this is a 2-ball Green Mountain boxwood and a 3-ball, and they just kind of trained these and kept them pruned to maintain these shapes. And again, if you're looking for a topiary that you can put in the ground, or maybe you've got some containers by the door and you want to just keep a real live topiary in them, these are great little shrubs. All right, the last conifer I'm going to talk to you about is this Pisifera globosa on a standard. And I cannot believe I don't have one of these in my yard. Every year we get these in, I'm like, I love these. This is just so different, so unique. It's got a little trunk on it. They've grafted it into a tree, and then it's going to grow into a big ball shape on the top. Yes, you can keep this pruned, but around here, these tend to grow pretty slow. But you could grow the top of this thing 3 or 4 foot wide and round and to like a lollipop shape. And how cool would that be when your friends and neighbors come over and see something like that growing in your yard? All right, this wraps up our tour and load of conifers here in the South. If you have any questions about this topic, make sure to leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to it. Or you can shoot us an email at info@skgreenhouses.com. If you are local or in driving distance and interested in conifers, there's going to be a link in the description that will take you to a sign-up form. And that way you will be notified. You'll be the first to know when shipments like these come in, and you will get first pick. And for those of you that are not local, we would love for you to join this community. We are putting out informational videos almost every week on flower gardening, vegetable gardening, shrubs, trees, conifers like this. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. We are on the road to 100K subs. Until next time, become a plant person.